Hey everyone. Before we dive in, make sure to like the video if you're excited to see what happens. Comment where you're watching from. I love knowing where you're from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories like this one. Alright, now let's get into it. It was a Saturday afternoon, the sun shining bright, and the air felt warm, like one of those rare, perfect days in the middle of autumn. I had just gotten off work from my waitressing shift at a local diner in town. Things were tight, like always. Bills were piling up, and I was doing my best to juggle them without falling behind. Life had been throwing curveballs for a while now, and I was just trying to stay afloat. My dad's birthday was coming up, and I knew I had to do something special for him. His name was George Williams, and he had always been the guy who made sure everyone else was taken care of, but he never asked for much. This year, though, I wanted to go all out. I wanted to give him something he deserved, a nice dinner, a fancy one. The kind of place he'd never dream of going to on his own, but that I knew he'd love. I called my mom, trying to work out the details for the dinner. "Hey, Mom, I'm thinking of booking us a reservation at that new steakhouse downtown," I said, feeling a bit nervous but hopeful. Her voice came through the phone, sounding skeptical. "Are you sure you can afford that, honey? I don't want you to stretch yourself too thin just to make a fancy dinner happen. You've got a lot going on already." My heart sank a little. I knew she meant well, but it stung hearing her doubts. The truth was, I didn't know if I could afford it. But I was willing to figure it out because I knew my dad deserved the best. I wasn't about to let a little thing like money stop me. "Mom, I can handle it. I've got it covered. Trust me." I forced a smile, even though I wasn't entirely sure how. We talked a little more, and I promised her I'd handle everything. I hung up feeling a bit more uncertain than before, but I was determined. That night, I went home and pulled up the steakhouse's website. The prices were outrageous, but I thought maybe I could scrape by if I cut some corners elsewhere. The following day, I made the reservation. I told myself that no matter what, I was going to make this happen for my dad. Later that afternoon, I went out to run a few errands, including picking up a small gift for him. I could barely afford it, but I knew it would mean the world to him. When I returned home, my mom was there. She was sitting at the kitchen table, looking concerned. "Honey, you sure about this?" she asked again. "You don't need to put yourself in a tough spot. I know you've been stressed with work and everything else." "Mom, please," I said, trying to reassure her. "I've got this. Dad deserves a night where he doesn't have to worry about anything. Let me take care of it." My mom gave me that look, the one where she knew I wasn't being entirely truthful, but she didn't press any further. The day of my dad's birthday came, and I could feel the nerves creeping in. I kept looking at my bank account, hoping something would change, but nothing did. I was running on empty, but I wasn't going to back out now. I picked my dad, George, up in the afternoon and we headed to the restaurant. It was one of those places where you felt out of place just walking in. There were tuxedoed waiters and shiny marble floors, the kind of restaurant you only saw in the movies. We walked in, and the host smiled at us. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" I nodded, trying to keep it together. "Yes, under the name Williams." The host looked down at the reservation book. His face lit up. "Ah, yes, Ms. Williams. We've been expecting you." I was a bit taken aback. Yes, that's me." My mind raced, wondering if they had made a mistake, or if they had confused me with someone else. My heart pounded as we were led to a private, beautifully lit table in the back of the restaurant. It felt surreal. I could feel my dad's eyes on me as we sat down. "This place looks fancy," he whispered, clearly impressed. "I know," I smiled, trying to mask the nervousness that was bubbling up inside me. "But you deserve it, Dad." The waiter came over, and that's when things took an unexpected turn. "Good evening, Ms. Williams. It's a pleasure to have you here," he said with a warm smile, addressing me by name. I froze. What? How did he know my name? The waiter continued. "We've prepared a special meal for you and your father. It's on the house, courtesy of the owner." I blinked. What? The owner? My mind was racing, trying to piece things together. The owner of this high-end restaurant knew me? There was no way. Before I could speak, the waiter excused himself, and I looked at my dad in confusion. What just happened? "Maybe they think you're someone else," my dad chuckled, clearly not sensing the full weight of the situation. I shook my head, trying to wrap my mind around what was happening. My heart was pounding, my hands suddenly sweaty. How could this be? Why was I being treated like the owner of the place? Before I could say another word, the manager appeared at the table with a smile and a handshake. "Ms. Williams, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. I've heard so much about you. We've been expecting you and your father for quite some time." I was speechless. There was no way this was happening. It had to be a mistake. I sat there, trying to process everything that had just happened. The manager had just called me Ms. Williams, like I was some kind of VIP. My heart was pounding in my chest as the weight of the situation started to hit me. I kept glancing at Dad, George, to see if he had any idea what was going on. But he was just sitting there, a little confused, but still clearly impressed by the luxury of the restaurant. The manager, a tall, well-dressed man, looked at me with a warm smile. "Ms. Williams," he said again, his voice filled with reverence. "It's truly an honor to finally meet you in person. The entire team has been looking forward to your arrival." I blinked, my brain still not catching up to the conversation. I'm sorry," I stammered. "I think there's been some mistake. I don't own this place. I'm just here for my dad's birthday. I don't know anyone here." The manager's smile didn't waver. Instead, he glanced over at the waiter and then back at me. "Of course, Ms. Williams. The owner simply wanted to make sure everything was perfect for you and your father tonight. Your reservation has been prepared. If there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to ask." I could feel my dad's eyes on me now. He leaned in closer, clearly curious. "What's going on, Em? You sure they've got the right person?" "I don't know, Dad," I whispered, trying to hide the confusion on my face. "I'm not sure what's happening, but they seem to think I'm someone important." The manager took a step back, his tone still warm and respectful. "We'll give you some time to settle in. Please enjoy your meal. And don't hesitate to ask if there's anything we can do to make your evening more comfortable." As he walked away, my mind was racing. I didn't recognize him or anyone else. What was going on? How did they know my name? I hadn't told anyone who I was. My dad was just as puzzled as I was, but he seemed content to go with the flow, enjoying the experience. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. My dad had always been humble. He'd never rubbed elbows with the rich and famous, and yet here we were, being treated like royalty in a restaurant that screamed luxury. I tried to focus on the menu, but it was all a blur. The waiter came over, this time with a bottle of wine, smiling as he poured it into our glasses. "The owner has chosen a special vintage for tonight," he said, placing the bottle down beside us. "Please, enjoy." I could feel the tension building in my chest, but I didn't know what to do. There had to be some mistake, right? Or maybe they thought I was someone else, someone who had money, someone important. But I was just Emily Williams, the daughter of George Williams, a hard-working man who'd always done his best to get by. After a few moments, I turned to my dad, trying to mask my growing unease. "Dad, I need to figure out what's going on. I'm going to talk to the manager." My dad gave me a puzzled look. "Are you sure that's a good idea? I don't want to make things awkward." But I couldn't help it. The curiosity was eating. Away at me. I had to know what was happening. Who was the owner? Why were we being treated this way? I excused myself and walked to the front of the restaurant, where the host was still standing, greeting guests as they entered. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "Can I speak to the manager again?" The host smiled and nodded. "Of course, Ms. Williams. I'll get him for you right away." A few moments later, the manager appeared, his smile unwavering. "Ms. Williams, is everything to your satisfaction?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "There's something I don't understand," I said. "Why are you treating me like I'm someone important? I don't own this restaurant, and I don't know anyone here. I'm just here for my dad's birthday." The manager's face didn't show any sign of surprise. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if expecting this question. "I understand your confusion, Ms. Williams. Please allow me to explain." I felt a wave of frustration rising, but I stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. "The owner of this restaurant is an old friend of your father's," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "They met many years ago, and although they lost touch for a while, he has always held your father in the highest regard. Your father made an impact on him when they were young, and ever since then, he has kept an eye on you and your family. He wanted to make sure that you were well taken care of." I stood frozen, trying to process what the manager was saying. My dad never mentioned any wealthy friends. Sure, he had some good connections, but this was something else entirely. "You're telling me that the owner of this restaurant is someone who knows my dad?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The manager smiled, his eyes softening. "Yes. And he's always wanted to help your family, but out of respect for your father's privacy, he chose to remain anonymous. He's been watching over you in ways you may not even realize." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This man, whoever he was, had been quietly supporting my family all this time, and I never knew it. My mind was racing, and I felt a lump in my throat as the weight of his words sank in. "But why would he go to all this trouble?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why would he want me to think I own the place?" The manager smiled again, this time with a touch of warmth. "Because tonight, he wanted to show you just how much he appreciates you and your father. He wanted to give you something special, something that would remind you that you're never alone." I blinked, struggling to absorb what he was saying. I had always thought I was just getting by on my own. But this was something entirely different. I nodded slowly, my mind still spinning. I don't know what to say." The manager's eyes glinted with understanding. "You don't need to say anything, Ms. Williams. Just know that you are appreciated. And if there's anything else we can do to make your evening perfect, please let us know." I nodded, finally finding my voice. "Thank you. I need some time to think." He smiled and excused himself, leaving me standing there in a daze. My dad would never believe this. As I walked back to the table, I tried to make sense of what had just happened. My dad was still eating, clearly enjoying himself, but I wasn't sure how to break the news to him. How do you tell someone that a stranger has been quietly helping you behind the scenes, making sure you always had what you needed, even when you didn't know it? I sat down, feeling more overwhelmed than ever. "Everything okay?" my dad asked, looking up at me with concern. "I think we're in the middle of something really strange," I said, my voice still shaky. I sat there, trying to gather my thoughts, but everything felt like it was moving 100 miles an hour. My heart was racing, and the sudden realization that we had been living under the care of an unseen benefactor, someone my father had known but had never spoken about, was almost too much to bear. I looked at my dad, George, who was still happily eating and chatting about the meal. He had no idea what had just been revealed to me. To him, it was just another nice dinner, a surprise treat for his birthday. But to me, It was something far deeper. "Dad," I said, my voice quieter than usual. "I need to tell you something." He looked up from his plate, his brows furrowing with concern. "What's wrong, Em?" I took a deep breath, trying to collect my words. I didn't want to overwhelm him, but I had to tell him everything. He deserved to know the truth. It's about the owner of this place. "The manager just told me something I can't believe," I began, my voice shaky. My dad put his fork down slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What are you talking about?" "He says the owner is someone who knew you, someone you met years ago, and he's been keeping an eye on me and our family ever since," I explained, barely able to keep my composure. "Apparently the owner has been quietly helping us for years, but he never wanted to reveal himself. The dinners, the scholarships, the surprise gifts, it was all him." My dad's face froze, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought he might say something, but he just stared at me, his mind clearly racing, trying to process what I had just said. "Wait. What?" he muttered, his voice hoarse. "Who is this man? Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I don't know, Dad," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "The manager says he wanted to stay anonymous. He didn't want you to know because he respected you too much to make it obvious. He didn't want you to feel indebted to him. He just wanted to make sure we were okay." For the first time, I saw my dad's eyes glisten with something like emotion, a mixture of confusion and gratitude. I don't know who this person is, but it sounds like someone who has always wanted to help," he said, shaking his head. "I never knew. I could tell he was struggling to understand, and I was too. How could someone we didn't even know be looking out for us in such a huge way? And why had he stayed hidden for so long?" I paused, thinking about everything the IGA manager had said. There were so many pieces of the puzzle I didn't understand yet. "Dad, the owner, he wanted to do something special for us tonight, to show us how much he appreciates you, how much he respects you." George's eyes softened as he looked at me, his voice low. "I don't know who he is, but he's got my respect. If he's been looking out for us, I'm grateful. But I don't know how I feel about all this secrecy. We've always been a family that handles things on our own." "I know, Dad," I said, taking his hand. "I get that. But maybe this is just the kind of help we needed, even if we didn't know it." For a few moments we sat there in silence, the weight of everything hanging between us. It wasn't just about a fancy dinner. It was about a stranger's kindness, and how it had impacted us without us even realizing it. It felt like a dream, but the truth was settling in. There was more to our story than I had ever known. "I don't know what to do with all this information," I said, feeling the heavy uncertainty settle over me. "What if this changes everything? What if we're not just regular people anymore, you know?" George looked at me with a wry smile. "We're still the same people, kiddo. Nothing's changed except now we know there are some good people out there, people who want to help. And maybe it's time we accepted that, without feeling guilty about it." I nodded slowly, trying to come to terms with it. Maybe my dad was right. Maybe I didn't have to figure out all the answers tonight. Maybe the best thing to do was simply accept that we were cared for in a way I had never known before. "I guess we'll never know who he really is," I said softly. "But that's okay, isn't it? Maybe we don't need to know." George chuckled softly. "Yeah, sometimes not knowing is the best part. Just be thankful we got a little something special tonight." We sat there, finishing our meal in a more relaxed silence, both of us thinking about the unexpected kindness that had changed the course of this birthday dinner. But I couldn't help but wonder, who was this man? Why had he stayed in the shadows All these years? And was this all part of some grand plan, or just an act of kindness? The rest of dinner passed in a quiet blur. My dad and I both tried to enjoy the meal, but my mind kept racing. I could hardly focus on the food, and each time I glanced around the restaurant, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was watching us. But not in a creepy way. It was more like someone who was quietly, almost reverently, looking out for us. I thought about everything the manager had said. The owner had been watching us from a distance for years. He'd helped us when we didn't know it. I kept thinking about how he had taken care of us without ever making his presence known. He could have come forward at any time, but instead, he chose to stay in the shadows, never seeking recognition. And it was working. We never suspected anything. How many times had we been helped and we never even knew it? It made me feel, I don't know, both grateful and a little guilty. My dad seemed lost in his thoughts too, occasionally glancing around the room like he was searching for someone. I wanted to ask him if he recognized anything, but I could tell he was still processing it too. This whole situation was so bizarre that neither of us knew what to do next. Finally, after a while, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know who this person was. I didn't care about the mystery anymore. It wasn't about the money or the help he had given us. It was about the respect, about why he had gone to such lengths to stay hidden. As the waiter came by again, checking on us, I made my decision. I stood up from the table, causing my dad to look up, startled. "Where are you going?" he asked. "I'm going to talk to the manager again," I said, my voice steady. "I have to get answers." I don't think you should," my dad said, his concern evident. "We don't know who this person is. It's better we just leave it alone." I shook my head. "I can't, Dad. I have to know. There's something more to this, and I need to understand why this person has been helping us. Who are they, really?" He didn't say anything else. I could tell he was reluctant, but he wasn't going to stop me. With a final, understanding glance, I walked away from the table. As I approached the front, I spotted the manager near the host stand, speaking to a few of the waitstaff. He noticed me coming over and smiled, his usual calm demeanor never faltering. "Ms. Williams," he greeted me warmly, clearly recognizing me immediately. "Is everything to your liking?" "I need to speak to the owner," I said, my voice firm but respectful. "I have some questions about the help my family has received over the years." His expression faltered for the briefest of moments, and then he composed himself again, giving a slight bow. "I understand, Ms. Williams. Please, allow me a moment. I will make sure the owner is informed of your request." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and dread. My heart was pounding in my chest. What if the owner came out and I still couldn't figure out who they were? What if I was wrong about all of this? Moments later, the manager returned, with an older gentleman in a tailored suit. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and a dignified air about him. When he stepped forward, he didn't introduce himself, but I could feel an aura of familiarity. "Ms. Williams," the older man said, his voice deep and calm. "I am the one you've been searching for." I froze. This was him. This was the man who had been quietly watching us, helping us all these years. His eyes, though soft, held something powerful, something that spoke of years of wisdom and kindness. "You are the owner?" I asked, still trying to make sense of everything. "Why? Why have you been helping us all this time? Why stay hidden?" The man smiled gently, his eyes twinkling with something like humor. "Because your father," he began, his voice steady, "was a man who never asked for help. He was proud, and I respected that. But sometimes people need a little guidance, a little kindness when they least expect it. Your father, George, has always been the type to give without expecting anything in return. He helped me many years ago, when I was in need, and I wanted to repay that. Quietly. I blinked, trying to keep my composure, but why not just tell us? Why keep it a secret? The man's expression softened. Because your family has always stood on its own feet. I didn't want to take that away from you. I wanted you to succeed on your own, without thinking you owed anyone anything. But sometimes, the greatest gift I can give is letting someone know they are not alone. You and your father have been through a lot, and you've both come out stronger. That's why I chose tonight to finally reveal myself, to show you that help has always been here, even when you didn't know it. I took a step back, my mind racing. So, all those scholarships, the checks that came in the mail, that was all you? The man nodded. Yes, every little bit was me, trying to make sure you had what you needed to succeed. I've been watching you both for years, waiting for the right time to reveal myself. And I think that time is now. I felt a lump form in my throat, the weight of his words sinking in. It wasn't just about the money or the luxury. It was about someone who had cared for us from the shadows, who had known what we needed before we even knew ourselves. I wasn't sure how to process it, but I was thankful. So incredibly thankful. Thank you, I whispered, feeling the emotions rise in my chest. I don't know what else to say. The man smiled again, a warmth radiating from him. You don't need to say anything, Ms. Williams. Just know that you've made me proud, and I'm glad to have been a small part of your journey. With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the back of the restaurant like a shadow. But I didn't feel abandoned or confused. I felt something else entirely, a sense of peace, of understanding. I finally knew the truth, and it was enough. I stood there for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. The owner of the restaurant, this mysterious benefactor who had been a part of our lives for years, had revealed himself in such an unexpected way. There was no fanfare, no grand announcement. Just a quiet revelation that he had been watching over us, helping us from the shadows. I walked back to the table, my mind still reeling, trying to make sense of it all. When I sat down, my dad was looking at me, his brow furrowed in concern. What did he say, Em? What did he tell you? I took a deep breath and smiled, still a little overwhelmed by the emotions swirling inside me. It's him, the owner. He's the one who's been helping us all this time. All the scholarships, the checks we've received, everything. It's him. My dad looked at me, his expression unreadable. For a moment I thought he might be upset or confused, but then I saw the faintest glimmer of recognition in his eyes. George, I said softly, looking at him intently. You know him, don't you? He nodded slowly, his face becoming more serious. Yes, I do, he said, his voice steady. A long time ago, I helped him out when he was in a tight spot. He's always kept an eye on us since then. But I never knew he'd been helping us in this way. I blinked, still trying to wrap my head around the revelation. But why keep it a secret? Why not tell us? Why not tell you? George sighed, looking down at his plate. You know me, Em. I've never liked to ask for help. And I guess he knew that. He respected that. He didn't want us to feel like we owed him anything. But I can see now. Maybe I was wrong to push people away. I reached across the table and took his hand, squeezing it gently. It's not your fault, Dad. He knew you wouldn't ask, and he did what he thought was right. Sometimes people help in ways we don't even see. But now we know. We know that we've had support all this time. George smiled softly, his eyes glistening with a mix of emotions. I suppose you're right. I just never expected anything like this. I took a deep breath and looked around the restaurant, still feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The luxurious surroundings, the fine dining. It all seemed so surreal now. But there was something else too. Something more important than the dinner or the mystery. "We're not alone, Dad," I said quietly, the truth settling in my chest. And that means everything. After a few moments of reflection, George looked at me, his smile widening. "You're right. We're not alone, and maybe we don't need to do everything on our own all the time. Maybe it's okay to accept help when it's given." For the first time, I felt a sense of peace, like the world had shifted in a way I hadn't expected. We had always been a family of pride, a family that fought to make it on our own no matter what. But now, I understood something deeper. Sometimes, accepting help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of strength. The dinner, the surprise, the kindness. It wasn't just about receiving help. It was about recognizing that we had people in our corner, even when we didn't know it. And that was a gift that no amount of money could ever replace. As we finished our meal, the evening stretched on in a kind of peaceful calm. I looked at my dad, and he gave me a nod, his face reflecting the same quiet understanding that I felt. We didn't need to know everything. We didn't need to have all the answers. What mattered was that we were okay. We had each other. And for the first time in a long time, I felt confident that the future, whatever it might bring, was something we could face together. As the days passed after the dinner, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. The revelation about the owner, the quiet generosity that had surrounded our family, and the lessons I had learned about pride, gratitude, and accepting help. It felt like my entire perspective on life had shifted in the span of just one evening. I spent a lot of time thinking about how I could take what I had learned and apply it to my own life. If someone could care for us without us even knowing, surely I could find ways to give back, to pass on the kindness that had been shown to us. I couldn't let the opportunity go to waste. It was early one morning, just after my shift at the diner, when the idea came to me. I was sitting at my small kitchen table, sipping coffee, and staring out the window when it hit me. The people I served every day, the ones who came in for a hot meal or a cup of coffee and a smile, they needed more than just food. They needed connection. They needed to know they weren't invisible, that someone cared. I grabbed my phone and texted a few of my friends, asking if they'd be interested in helping me start a small community initiative. It didn't have to be anything grand, just a way to make people feel valued. The idea was simple. Pay for someone's meal, help someone who might need a little extra assistance, offer kindness to people who are often overlooked. That afternoon, I met with a few people who shared the same vision, and together we started brainstorming. We called it Pay It Forward, inspired by the idea that one small act of kindness could create a ripple effect. It was going to be our way of giving back to the community that had supported us over the years. We started small, buying groceries for a family in need, offering free meals to those who couldn't afford them, and leaving little surprise gifts for people at the local shelters. The more we did, the more I realized how much power a simple gesture could have. It wasn't about the money or the things we were giving. It was about the impact we were making. I'll never forget the first time we helped someone who wasn't expecting it. A young woman, probably in her early 20s, came into the diner one afternoon, looking tired and worn down. She ordered a coffee and sat in the corner, staring out the window as if she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. I noticed her, and something inside me told me to approach. I took a deep breath and walked over to her table. "Hey, I hope you're doing okay," I said softly, offering a smile. "I just wanted to let you know that your meal today is on us. If you ever need anything, we're here for you." The young woman looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. "Well, what? But I can't afford to—" "Don't worry about it," I interrupted gently. It's just a little something to remind you that someone cares." Her eyes filled with tears as she reached out and took my hand. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You have no idea what this means to me." It was a moment that stayed with me for days. The simple act of offering kindness had completely changed the course of her day, and maybe even her week. It wasn't a life-changing gesture, but it mattered to her. It mattered to me. As we continued our small acts of kindness, I felt a sense of fulfillment I hadn't felt in a long time. I had been so focused on surviving, on doing everything on my own, that I had forgotten how powerful giving could be. And I wasn't the only one feeling the change. The people I worked with, the people I helped, they were all starting to see the beauty in small, everyday acts of generosity. One afternoon, as I was leaving work, I bumped into George on the street. He had been quiet lately, reflecting on everything that had happened. But when he saw me, his eyes lit up with pride. "How's the pay it forward thing going?" he asked, grinning. I smiled back, feeling a warmth in my chest. "It's going better than I expected. We've helped so many people already, and the word is starting to spread. People are starting to believe in kindness again." "That's great, kiddo," he said, his voice filled with affection. "You're making a real difference. I'm proud of you." I felt my heart swell with pride. My dad had always been the quiet type, never seeking recognition, but when he looked at me like that, when he said he was proud, it made everything worth it. It wasn't about money or fame or status. It was about doing the right thing, no matter how small the action seemed. That evening, after George and I parted ways, I went home and reflected on how far we had come. The unexpected dinner, the generosity of a stranger, and the lessons I had learned from it all. They had shaped me into someone who now knew how to give back, how to spread kindness in a world that sometimes felt cold. And that's when I realized the greatest gift wasn't the help we received. It was the chance to help others. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. I sent a quick message to the people involved in Pay It Forward, telling them how proud I was of what we had started together. We weren't just helping people. We were changing lives, one small act at a time. The ripple effect had begun. A few weeks had passed since the Pay It Forward initiative had kicked off. Each day felt like a new opportunity to spread kindness. And the more I gave, the more I felt like I was receiving in return. The smiles, the thank yous, the surprise, moments when someone would break down in gratitude. It was all starting to make sense. This was what I was meant to do. The diner had become a place where people came not just for food, but for comfort. There was a sense of community now that hadn't been there before. I'd always thought of myself as just a waitress, someone who took orders, served coffee, and made sure people had a good meal. But now, I was a part of something bigger. George and I had started talking more about the past, about people we'd known, and how life sometimes had a funny way of bringing things full circle. My dad had always been the kind of guy who helped quietly, never asking for recognition. But now, we both realized that there was strength in acknowledging the help we had received, and in continuing that help in any way we could. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when I ran into the same young woman I'd helped weeks ago. Her name was Samantha, and she was the one who had nearly broken down when I paid for her meal at the diner. I had noticed her a few times since then, and we'd exchanged a few words, but today she looked different, lighter, more at peace. She was sitting at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee, and as soon as I saw her, I made my way over. "Hey, Samantha," I said, trying to keep the surprise in my voice down. "How's everything been going?" She turned around, and for a moment, she didn't recognize me. Then her eyes widened. "Oh, Emily." She smiled, her face lighting up. "I didn't even recognize you at first. I'm doing so much better, actually." I took a seat next to her, I'm glad to hear that. You seem happier. She laughed, a real, genuine laugh, and nodded. I feel better. After you paid for my meal that day, I started thinking about how much I was just letting life happen to me, instead of making choices for myself. I was stuck in a rut, and I didn't even realize it. That small act of kindness gave me the push I needed. I smiled, feeling a warm glow inside. That's amazing, Samantha. Sometimes all it takes is a little reminder that there's goodness out there, you know. She nodded again, her eyes shining. I do. And you know what? After that, I started paying it forward. I helped a woman at the grocery store who couldn't pay for her items. It was small, but it felt right. I felt my heart swell with pride. That's incredible. That's exactly what this is all about. Yeah, she said thoughtfully, and I think I finally figured out what I want to do with my life. I'm going back to school. I'm going to get my degree in social work. I want to help people the way you helped me. My breath caught in my throat. Wow, I had no idea. That's amazing, Samantha. You're going to make a real difference. She smiled and shook her head. I just want to give back, and I couldn't have done it without you showing me how powerful kindness can be. My heart swelled with emotion. I wasn't just giving meals or groceries or paying for things. I was making an impact, and it was spreading far beyond what I had ever imagined. It was a ripple effect, a wave of kindness that just kept growing and growing. I gave her a hug, the kind of hug that says more than words ever could. As time passed, the Pay It Forward movement continued to spread. More people were involved, and the community began to take on a life of its own. The diner became a central point where people knew they could go for help, whether it was a meal or simply a place to talk. Every day, someone would surprise someone else with a free coffee or a meal, and I would watch it happen, knowing that the small moments of generosity were creating something bigger than all of us. The best part was knowing that my dad, George, was proud of me. He had always been a man who quietly helped others, never seeking recognition. And now I was continuing that legacy in my own way. We had both learned that accepting help and giving it were equally important. We had learned that sometimes it wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving together. One afternoon, as I was cleaning up after a busy lunch shift, George came into the diner. He had a small envelope in his hand, and when he reached the counter, he slid it toward me. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. He smiled, his eyes twinkling. "I've been keeping this for a while. It's from someone who wanted to thank you for everything you've done." I opened the envelope slowly, carefully pulling out a handwritten note. It was from the restaurant owner, the man who had helped us in secret all those years. I had never expected anything from him, but the note was heartfelt, and it made me tear up. "Emily, you have continued what I started, and for that, I am proud. Your kindness is now the kind that is being passed on to others, and you've become the true reflection of what it means to give. You've not only impacted your family, but your entire community. That's a gift I could never give you. But you've earned it yourself. Keep paying it forward. And never forget that the smallest gestures are sometimes the most powerful." The owner. I felt a wave of emotions flood over me as I finished reading the note. The truth was, it wasn't just about the help he had given us. It was about the way it had all come full circle. Now I was the one paying it forward, and it was my turn to pass along the same kindness. I looked up at George, who was standing there with a proud smile on his face. "I'm doing it, Dad. I'm making a difference." "I knew you would, Em," he said softly. "You've always had it in you." And in that moment, I knew he was right. I had come a long way from the girl who struggled to make ends meet. Now, I was part of something bigger, something that would last long after I was gone. The ripple effect of kindness had started with a stranger, but it was up to us to keep it going. As the months passed, life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. The Pay It Forward movement that had started with a simple idea had grown into something much bigger. We had helped more people than I could have ever imagined, and with each act of kindness, I felt myself growing stronger, more connected to the world around me. There were still struggles, of course. No journey is without its challenges. But now, when something difficult happened, I had a new perspective. I wasn't alone. I had a community that cared, and I knew how to give back in ways that truly mattered. It wasn't about the material things anymore. It was about showing up for each other when it counted. One morning, as I sat at the diner with my coffee, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed. George had always been my rock, the steady presence in my life. But I realized something. I had become my own person, standing tall in the face of whatever life threw at me. I had finally embraced the idea that strength didn't mean doing everything alone. It meant accepting help and knowing when to offer it in return. The diner was still a place of comfort and community, and I had begun mentoring a few of the younger waitstaff. They reminded me of myself, people just trying to make ends meet, not always seeing the bigger picture. I shared my story with them, about how I had learned to take small steps of kindness and how it had changed everything. I wanted them to know that no matter where they came from, they had the power to make a difference. One day, as I was closing up the diner, I received a call. It was Samantha, the young woman I had helped when she was struggling. "Hey, Emily, it's Samantha," she said, her voice excited. "I just wanted to let you know that I got into the social work program at the university. I'm starting this fall. I'm so grateful for everything you did for me. You've really changed my life." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Samantha, I'm so proud of you. I knew you had it in you. You're going to make such a difference in this world." "I'm not done yet," she said with a laugh. "I'm going to start paying it forward, just like you taught me. I can't wait to start helping others the way you helped me." Hearing those words made me realize just how far this movement had spread. It wasn't just about the people we had helped in small, quiet ways. It was about the future we were building, one act of kindness at a time. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this was only the beginning. There was so much more to be done. George and I had talked about this, about how we could continue to make a lasting impact on the people around us. It was time to take the next step. I decided to start a foundation, a nonprofit that would help provide resources to people in need. It would focus on community development, scholarships, and offering support to families facing financial hardships. I knew I couldn't do it alone, but with the support of the people around me, I believed we could make a real difference. A few months later, the foundation launched. We started small, offering local grants to help individuals pay for school or start businesses. We provided food and clothing to those in need and created community programs to connect people with resources they may not have known about. The impact was immediate, and with every new person we helped, I felt the ripple effect growing stronger. The diner had become a hub for the foundation, where people could learn about the programs we offered and share their stories. George was involved, too, offering mentorship to those in need and sharing his wisdom with the next generation. Together, we had built something far greater than either of us could have done alone. I was no longer just the waitress who served coffee and smiled at regulars. I was someone who had found a deeper purpose, and I knew that I was exactly where I needed to be. I had found my voice, and I was using it to help others. And every time I saw someone's face light up with gratitude, or heard them speak about how they had been helped, I knew that it was all worth it. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't about being recognized. It was about the connections we made, the lives we touched, and the way we could change the world by simply showing up and caring. One evening, as I stood outside the diner, looking at the streetlights that flickered in the distance, I realized that life had come full circle. Everything I had been through, the struggle, the heartache, the unexpected twists, had led me here. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "Everything okay, Em?" George asked as he joined me outside. I smiled at him, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Yeah, Dad. Everything's perfect." "You've done good, kid. I'm proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I wrapped my arm around his, squeezing him tightly. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." We stood there together, watching the world go by, knowing that no matter what happened next, we had created something real. We had made a difference. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all.